All right, good afternoon and welcome back to the House Environment Committee. We are going to be looking at new language in the 3-acre stormwater committee bill that was worked on over the lunch hour.
This is Michael Grady with Legislative Council. I am here to talk to you about 25-0967 draft 4.2, which is on your website with a 3/13 date and a 2:31 p.m. timestamp. I've removed all the previous highlighting that you saw already in draft 4.1. You can go to the utility committee language on page 12 to 13. And the language that is changing relates to the powers and duties of the study committee. They are directed to review current statutory authority for the development of regional stormwater utilities comprised of multiple municipalities, including identifying any potential disincentives or obstacles to utility formation. They need to propose an approach the state could use for implementing a regional stormwater utility that would allow the utilities to assume liability and responsibility for compliance with water quality laws, including how a utility could assume responsibility to secure the permitting of property subject to a 3-acre permit. They will review and recommend cost-effective and equitable approaches for regional level revenue raising and distribution of project funding for the purpose of stormwater controls to meet total maximum daily load plans, including consideration of prior revenue raising recommendations made in the 2017 Clean Water Report from the Office of the State Treasurer. My only point there is if you can find it. I have a copy of it if the committee needs it, but it's not readily available online anymore.
That's very interesting. Not even in our own archives, because I would think
That's
that's where you found it.
that's where it is, but you don't find it on the reports. You can find it on the Senate Ag Committee website from 2017. But I have it. The agency probably has it too. And they will recommend whether and how to authorize a regional stormwater utility to assess fees or charges to landowners, residents, and businesses within the regional stormwater utility district for the purpose of stormwater controls to meet TMDLs. Propose how a regional stormwater utility district could be eligible for Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund awards and access state level financial assistance for the design, construction, and operation and maintenance of regulatory and non-regulatory stormwater systems, including from the Clean Water State Revolving Loan Fund. And they will recommend whether and how a regional stormwater utility can cost effectively and equitably allocate resources and achieve pollutant reduction measures insufficiently achieved by regulated sites. This might be articulated in a regional stormwater management plan. I'm gonna stop there because this is really kind of like the bulk of what substance that changed, and see if you all want any changes.
So I got a little stumbled over insufficiently. Pollutant reduction measures insufficiently achieved by regulated sites. Okay. Representative Logan, I mean, out of shape saying Logan.
So essentially, the regional stormwater utility, when it's difficult, when they come across difficult sites, for example, that's what insufficiently achieved by regulated sites. So we're not meeting the TMDL
Yeah.
through.
I get it. It's just an
Yeah.
interesting word, insufficient.
Yeah. Do you have a suggestion for another
I
word?
don't know, measures. No, I don't. Just not used to it.
And achieve pollutant reduction measures. It's like
Yeah.
currently,
Where are you?
line 14.
Line 14. On line 1 on page 16, but I'm on a Word document.
Oh,
Hold on. Let me get to the PDF first.
Why don't you say to achieve pollutant reduction measures that are not achieved on regulated sites?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would be great. English. That's good.
The same thing.
Fair skin.
14 under T.
Or not fully achieved, if you want to.
Achieved, yeah.
Reference.
Or cannot be achieved.
Cannot cost effectively be achieved.
Cost effectively or equitably.
Did we have cost effectively and equitably in here? Because I.
Yeah, multiple
Yes.
times.
Oh, what?
Not D.
Oh, yeah,
but I
D.
almost-
Got it. Okay, so
So the whole concept that I was trying to incorporate into here ended up in D.
mhm.
We're an entirely new set of wording.
Yeah.
That's- Yeah, looking for alternatives.
Okay, so
And-
that's what
and-
happened, right?
How about this? How about recommend whether and how a regional stormwater utility can allocate resources and achieve pollutant reduction measures not cost effectively and equitably currently achieved through regulated sites.
Yes,
I like that better.
yes, that's good. That gets at the spirit.
Yeah.
What do you think, Michael?
To recommend whether and how a regional stormwater utility can allocate resources and achieve pollutant reduction measures that are not cost effectively and equitably achieved by regulated sites. Is that it?
I think I included the word currently.
Mhm.
Currently. Okay. All right.
If we need currently.
Yeah, it currently might actually confuse.
I would leave currently out.
Okay.
Representative Morris.
Madam Chair, does regulated sites, does that include the 3 acre properties?
Yeah.
Yes, that's what it means. That's
This
what
is
it is.
intended to cover.
Yeah. Leaving the last fragment there then as might be articulated in a regional stormwater management, does that stay? That part of the sentence stays?
What does that mean?
So there's a little bit more clarity here. I don't actually know that we need it in D, but in 4. And we reference the above term, so it's kind of described below. Anyway,
So I was wondering about the stormwater management plan. Where did that come from? Did that,
At the end of D or?
we made it up.
yeah.
Yeah, we made
Is
it up.
that, do you, yeah. Would you like to speak to that?
I can speak partially to it. And for the record, my name is John Tito, the Clean Water Initiative Program, and accompanied by Emily Bird, the Program Manager for the Clean Water Initiative Program.
Maybe you can, I can't see through too. Sorry, thank you. Hi.
Yeah, I think what we're trying to tackle with this language in this section is what we heard the committee talk about, which is dealing with the 3 acre sites that just can't achieve all of the pollutant reductions that we're looking for on those sites for a number of reasons. Maybe they can get to 50% or 75%, and creating a way for the stormwater utility to find those reductions somewhere else. And so when we were talking about it during the lunchtime meeting, figuring out a way that they would find those reductions through potentially like a planning process, I think is what was suggested as a way to sort of maybe the utility. It's hard because it's sort of a study committee on a utility, but potentially they could recommend that these utilities would have a regional plan and a plan to achieve phosphorus reduction and explore that as a way to sort of move phosphorus when it's not being achieved on some of these 3 acre sites. I think that was the intent.
I'll say another intent for me is that I'm wanting this stormwater utility to have some flexibility in including more sites that have arbitrarily been left out because of size, and then making it more equitably shared cost.
Correct.
Okay, so I want to make sure that's captured in this study.
That's what we're.
What do you mean by include sites?
Well, so we've seen a couple of maps of a 3 acre subdivision that happens to trigger, and then like the upstream one doesn't because it's smaller, but they're both contributing stormwater pollutants. It's just one happens to not be 3 acres, but they're in the same watershed and it's the same pollutants, it's the same stormwater and then the stow map, who's in, who's out. that we saw yesterday.
Right, by include, you mean to assess them? Or to require them to do something?
I think yes. But increasing the share,
You mean both?
yeah, both.
Um, So they would be off, you're gonna look at how they're going to assess fees or charges to landowners, residents and businesses within the district for purposes of stormwater controls to meet TMDLs. So that's there. Do you want to say something about to both regulated and non-regulated landowners, residents and businesses?
Can we?
I think you could. I mean, most of the stormwater utilities, they assess everyone.
That's what I thought we were headed to.
Mhm.
That's what I thought this was. So, yeah. There's a couple in Tagliavia North and then Logan.
To the example you brought up. I think, I don't remember 100%, but I thought with the example you brought up that there was differences in dates with the stormwater permit.
There may be, in which
Wouldn't
case,
your example be the same as double jeopardy?
no,
Somebody already,
no, anyone that has already met their stormwater discharge requirements has met them. So no, there's not.
that's what I meant by the upstream or the uphill
My
subdivision.
understanding in that example was it was not a permitted, it just didn't hit 3 acres. I might be wrong, but
But even in a permitted, in that scenario where there's permitted going into unpermitted, you have a utility, and there's an example in South Burlington, same scenario. There's still a utility, they're still collecting from the permitted subdivision. They are going to assess the unpermitted subdivision because it's an orphan. And they're gonna then allocate costs to the homeowners in the orphan. The question really becomes, is it equitable for the one that's up the hill to be contributing into they are literally contributing into the orphan system and not going to pay anything for that. And what they did to comply with the manual was the minimum that they needed to comply with the manual. Really, who's at fault is South Burlington for authorizing the discharge into the orphan system when they knew it was an unpermitted failed system. So that's who's at fault. But you have it, I mean, it really ticks off the people that are in the orphan system.
Mm.
And because what the houses that were built were millionaire houses that cut down all the trees on the ridge so that they could see
Yeah.
animals home.
Yeah.
And so not a lot of people like the people up the hill.
all right, let's not go too far. Social weeds here.
So that's the kind of thing that that this utility could address. One of the things that they could do is they'd be assessing everyone. They'd be taking some of the assessment from the people that were uphill and using that to fix what was downhill.
So can I just also I want a clarifying question. I mean, I thought in the case of South Burlington, every single South Burlington property paid into the stormwater utility.
If you have impervious surface, yes.
So that's what I'm imagining. Like the larger community is taking responsibility for all of the impervious.
Right.
Okay.
And it's not just, and then they take responsibility for things like the MS4 activities or the roads permit or any other thing that might come up that involving stormwater, they use that money to pay for those costs.
Right.
And they're really good at getting federal money. They used to be.
In the situation you described, what kind of an assessment are we talking about? Both for the ones up on the hill?
Now, it would only be the ones that were in the planned unit development. That is the orphan system.
But so in your example of South Burlington, would those people be paying twice? To Representative Tagliafi's point, they'd be paying townwide assessment and an additional fee to do work in their development?
Yeah,
Under the TMDL or under the stormwater?
under the 3-acre permit.
Okay, so, but we're saying we want to create that opportunity for the way that MS4 is for the 3-acre permit is the TMDL.
Well, yeah, the municipality that's an MS4 theoretically has the ability to assume that within their MS4. And then take responsibility over it. And then assess, they're still gonna assess.
Are they going, and they have a choice now of assessing either the whole community more
Yeah.
or it's targeted to those properties. Anyway, we don't need to do the study works work. What we want them to do is figure this out. So we want the words that make it clear. That we want kind of options for how to make it more equitable. That's really what we're looking for. Representative North and Logan, then Austin.
Yeah, and I want a key on your word flexibility. I think that's kind of what originally what I was looking for. When you're first trying to edit this is the ability to not just focus on the regulated behavior like which is pinpoints here and there in the area, but allow the utility to focus on a larger area and maybe even do more remediation than what's required for the 0.3-acre sites. And maybe not even do the remediation on those 3-acre sites, but downstream covering a larger area and actually protect the lake more by stopping more phosphorus. So giving that flexibility to kind of more broadly
Address water pollution.
address stormwater.
All water.
Hence the plan idea that I think ended up in here.
Yeah.
Representative Logan.
Yeah, and that is exactly what I was gonna say. I also have another question, but
So
in D, 3D and 4, this is where we tried to bring that planning language in. Essentially, I think what we're trying to say here in 4 is that the study committee should recommend changes to statute that would include, authority to do storm water management planning for purposes of overall regional phosphorus pollutant reductions. And our understanding is that we don't want to indicate that we're trying to change statute substantively from what was agreed upon with the EPA.
Right, I mean, I think that's here. I mean, the purpose of this is not to escape EPA's mandates. The purpose of this is to figure out a way how to meet the mandates
Right.
and in flexible ways.
Yeah.
I do think one of the things that the utilities could ultimately become are what are called the clean water service providers right now. They would be the ones that would as Rep. North noted, go out and find projects to clean the waters, to meet load. If they were a clean water service provider, they would have a load allocation attributed to them. And then they could go out and find different projects to meet that.
So just to follow up on that, that was Rep. North's intention, is that it would be somewhat more systematic. So there would be a planning process. So instead of just like going out finding projects, they would
The
They
challenge
have goals.
plan.
and those projects are there.
They're there.
They're already identified in many of these watersheds.
But that's what you're telling this utility to do, and I don't know how specific you want to get. Because you're gonna have you're gonna have the people that talk stormwater fluently, right? And they're gonna wanna talk at a higher level. Probably wanna give them flexibility to do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the key.
Follow-up question, how about, towns like City of Burlington, City of South Burlington, would we be able to delegate authority still to cities?
I think
Aside from the regional?
when I thought about that and I thought, you're gonna be your own utility. Or maybe you and South Burlington and Colchester and Winooski form your own utility.
Mhm.
Because just like the solid waste districts, you have your own district and you do your own thing, but then all the Chittenden County towns form their own. You probably want to, when there's statute for this, and you're gonna need statute for this. One of the choices is, do you give towns, like Middlebury's their own solid waste entity? Do you give towns like that the ability to choose that they're gonna be their own utility or if they want to work in a regional entity?
Yes. Although then you take the big players out, I guess.
Pardon?
And you take the big players out. And they're not really helping the rest of the region.
Right, I mean,
Why would they not be helping the rest of the region? If they're doing their part, how is that not helping the big picture?
Well, because they have like a lot, they have they're gonna raise more money.
right, that's,
They're gonna raise more money and the small system in Richmond is not gonna benefit from all that. Revenue in a larger town that's coming in to help resolve it all. So it's like watershed base, some watershed scale is what needs to happen. However, again, we're getting into the weeds of what we want to figure out. We're not solving the problem. I want to focus on this language reflecting what we need. Do folks have changes they want to propose beyond what we've already proposed? Can we keep going to number 4?
sure, so you're on page 4.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
That's okay. Just to clarify, if a PUD of 60 houses has already spent money to put in stormwater ponds, would they again have to pay a fee?
Depends on how their stormwater utility was created in their town.
What if the town didn't create?
No.
No, they won't have.
If they've met their obligations under the TMDL, no.
If I can add to that, all of these sites do have ongoing expenses past construction as well, required maintenance and
Yeah.
inspection and reporting.
Yeah.
And so I think that for the sites that have been taken on by municipalities, they do continue to pay in to cover some of those expenses.
But would be on private land.
Right, yeah. So if they were to subscribe to the utility, then they could be potentially paying for those ongoing operation and maintenance requirements as part of that
Gotcha.
service. And I don't know, the study could probably get into this, but maybe different rates depending on the status of compliance for that impervious surface.
For the record, maybe you could just say,
I apologize. For the record, my name's Emily Bird, Clean Water Initiative
Thank you.
Program Manager.
Great. That makes sense. Yeah. Great.
4.
Number 4, they are going to propose how statute should be amended to implement any of the recommendations of the study committee, including stormwater management planning for purposes of overall regional phosphorus pollutant reductions. And then 5, they will estimate a cost to operate proposed regional stormwater utility districts. Those are the changes in this.
Okay.
I have a couple of tweaks that I need to make. Page 14, line 4, authorize a regional stormwater utility to assess fees or charges to all landowners, residents. Probably want to put a comma after residents and businesses within the regional stormwater utility districts. Does that work? And then on page 14, line 8, I'm going to strike the semicolon after awards And then on page 14, lines 12 through 15, recommend whether and how a regional stormwater utility can allocate resources and achieve pollutant reduction measures cost effectively and equitably that are not fully achieved by regulated sites.
Didn't you indicate regulated or unregulated?
Well, it might include unregulated, but that's what we're trying to do is meet the regulated sites presumably meet the TMDL, so. Yeah, Emily.
If I may, sorry to
See,
one way to clarify the scope of that may be to look at for that watershed, the phosphorus reduction target that would have been met by the 3-acre sites and assign that to the utility in some way. I don't want to be specific here, but that might help to put some
That's great.
words
Yeah.
on what they're charged with. Because there are clean water service providers that may be a great partner in all of this, but they have their own targets that they're charged with meeting, non-regulatory. So just want to create some clarity in terms of the charge.
That is helpful. Representative Bartholomew, did you get that, Michael?
No.
All right,
I
Emily.
mean, I don't know how I would integrate that in this language. Recommend how, whether and how a stormwater utility can allocate resources and achieve, is it achieve the 3-acre pollutant? Where do you put the 3-acre goal?
Achieved.
Regulated site.
Could it be attributed to the 3-acre requirement?
Maybe write a new sentence and then work it in.
Could you put it in number 2? Including how a utility could assume responsibility for securing the permitting of properties subject to the 3-acre stormwater permit. You could say for securing the permitting of properties subject to and blah, 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 just 3. And the phosphorus reduction or the whatever requirement for.
Yeah, like
Something like
for securing the permitting of property subject to the 3-acre stormwater permit and meeting the 3-acre.
Yeah.
Target
phosphorus
allocation.
We have, based on the currently identified 3-acre sites, the stormwater program has estimated what phosphorus reductions would be achieved through this program. And so if there were sites that weren't able to meet that, then it would allow this utility to look at it more holistically to find more cost-effective options. But it would need to be additive to the non-regulatory work and not supplanting the non-regulatory work in order to meet the TMDL.
So it's for achieving the phosphorus reduction, is it for the watershed?
For the bounds of the utility. Yeah, for the bounds of the utility would make sense because we don't know the geographic scale yet of what those utilities would be.
The phosphorus, but you said it was the phosphorus reduction target from 3 acres, is that correct?
Thank you.
Okay, I can do that.
Representative Bartholomew.
We're obviously focused on phosphorus, but I think the answer is yes, but do we want to limit this committee's work to phosphorus?
Yes.
TMDL.
I mean, I'm seeing on line 18.
Nodded by a representative from the other side of the state.
But it's not limited because it's about,
TMDLs.
say, achieving the TMDLs or meeting the TMDLs. And so when the Connecticut River TMDL comes due, the utility could be.
Well, there's more than nitrogen. There's sediment, all kinds of stuff.
That's why it's.
I'm just wondering whether we want the word phosphorus on line 18. And we probably do. I just was asking.
But that's an including, right?
It's in
It's in an including phrase.
Yep, I see that.
What's page? I'm sorry, what?
Page
14.
14, line 18.
18, line 18.
That's an including.
Okay, I see that.
Because up above on the prior page, line 19.
TMU.
It just says
Yeah.
TMDLs. We just wanted to be really specific about regional phosphorus reduction planning, including.
Right.
Line 13 doesn't say phosphorus. Just. I'm fine with it. I just thought I'd ask.
And I would hope that whatever we learn about stormwater utilities could be applied to different TMDLs. So
Yeah.
the proposal is a theoretical. We might not institute it for
Yeah,
TMDLs right away.
in there.
Thank you.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm trying to fair
Thank
pick
you.
up, but
Oh,
thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for being here.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks.
Gianna's got you.
Representative Morris.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I'm just trying to understand how, I like this regional approach or territorial approach around problem impervious surface regulated parcel. I just want to mention again, how do the fairgrounds, how would they fit into this? Would this also allow them to use a regional approach?
Yeah, I mean, the utility would be set up. It just from prior experience and looking at these before, they usually exist for a little bit before they start doing control, but they're assessing. So they build funds, then they prioritize what they're going to go out to address, and they're still building funds. And they do a lot. They do a lot of projects that aren't just, they'll cost share with private entities. They'll work to fundraise with private entities. You know, the private entities have to also engage with them. You know, I know that some utilities try to do things for private entities and the private entities are arm's length. But it's there. And that will be about how you write the statute to create these, right? And what they can do and how they can do it. And can they form their own businesses? Like, can you somehow monetize this? And those are things that the solid waste management entities do. You would probably want to give them the same corporate power. And so those are the things to think about when you're drafting the statute. But let the PhD in stormwater language figure that stuff out and recommend how to do that to you.
And again, this is just asking for a report to come back with a study. But I just was trying to understand my own mind if those parcels would be included in that study.
I mean, if they're gonna be in the district and the statute gives the district the ability to assess all properties in the district for their impervious surface and then use that money for all stormwater management within the district, I wouldn't see why they wouldn't use that money to help those properties achieve regulatory requirements.
They'd be in. And they might even be a place where you could get more reduction. It's a bigger price.
Right.
Bigger property.
And specifically, if I may, Madam Chair, speak to the Rutland Fairgrounds. I was up there a year ago when we had a flash storm come through in the street out front of the fairgrounds was flooded. Well, there's businesses across the street that all have impervious surfaces. It runs down the hill and flooded this valley. Ultimately, it drains there, perceivably. And so I'm just trying to get my arms around that. This regional approach, and I think you've answered that, would include those other properties as an assessment tool.
Remember, you are creating municipalities. That's what they are. They're larger municipalities. And just as municipalities do road maintenance for everyone in the municipality, this utility will be doing stormwater management for everyone in the utility.
Representative Tagliavini.
The Rutland Fair. And the idea about the utility. And maybe this has been discussed in a different way, but I don't know why a light bulb just went off. Are we talking about, because of the utility, taking and maybe using the utility as a way to help out a situation like the Rutland Fair, where in other areas nearby, that area can be used as an offset to whatever the Rutland Fair can't achieve?
It's a way, I mean, some of the limitations that the municipal utilities have right now, they can't find offsets. There aren't offsets in their watershed that anybody wants to give up outside their town boundaries because they want to save those for their town, right? But if you go to a more regional approach and everyone's able to draw on everyone within the district, you could find an offset for Rutland or whomever.
Some of the, well, another thought, and I know it can't be used in a lot of places depending on the size of the subdivision. But if you have large enough parcels in a subdivision, I don't know what the restrictions are, DEC or whatever, regarding putting in your own pond. Is there a way that we could relax those restrictions to encourage people to keep their water on by their own pond, or encourage a way to allow some of the water coming down the road, go into their pond and then exit and allow it to sediment that way?
I mean, I suspect there's some of that being designed right now.
Yeah.
I think that's what we're talking about.
I think that.
Well, I mean,
Right.
incentivize residential.
And you can use that property on like a normal.
I don't know about monetize it, but use it as a way to encourage, yeah.
That would be doable and if the utility.
I think it's doable now and it would be doable.
Yeah, that's what we.
But you could do an EFA, an engineering feasibility analysis, to figure out where you could put the pond but you can't use that pond like you use.
Right.
Well, I understand. To incentivize property owners, landowners, kind of figure out a way to allow it to be dual purpose. So it could be used as a pond, like from the traditional sense, but they'll still allow it, maybe have two different levels. So in storms, it could pick up sediment. I'm just trying to.
Never say never, but generally you still have the fence requirement around the stormwater pond, right?
That I can't speak to, I'm not sure.
We'd like to get rid of.
Well,
I know, I mean, that's.
you run into liability issues with that, so
But
you
that's
gotta be
what the
very
study
careful.
committee will look at,
Yes.
won't it? Like these options.
Let them do the job. Yeah.
Yeah, all right, so I'm feeling like we're moving in on this language and we should put a wrap on this conversation. Are there any other substantive thoughts on the content of the page here? Not seeing any. I think you have good direction.
Yes.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Um,
So you want me to move on to 319?
yeah,
A couple of little tweaks elsewhere in the bill.
Oh,
Is that okay?
we have a couple other thoughts. Go ahead.
Is that okay? Yeah. On page 3, line 14. Page 3, line 14. Where the date is moved out to 2028.
Mhm.
Given what we've talked about, looking for some flexibility and wanting to have maybe a little bit more time to raise some funds for these, before these utilities hopefully get online that we're talking about being developed, could we push that out to 2030? So 2028?
I think there may,
Yeah, if I could speak to that, I think 2038 was recommended because of the TMDL deadline being 2036.
we're to 2028.
Line 14, 14. 2028.
We're talking about Lake Champlain.
Yeah, the Lake Champlain
The Lake
region.
Champlain one, right? And
Push
you
that out 2
push
more
it out
years.
2 more years to 2030.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I guess I was gonna speak to the 2036 and needing at least 5 years of construction being 2028, but also recognizing some space for some laggards that may fall behind that. 2028 is a bit more conservative, shows a bit more of a reasonable assurance that we'll get all those sites to construction before 2036. I think that was the intent for 2028.
Yeah, I don't want to move it out. I don't. I'm speaking for
I guess
myself.
I feel like it's a pretty generous bump now.
Okay.
Yeah.
When we learn about stormwater utilities,
We may.
we could, at that point, we might
Okay.
want to bump that date.
That's what I'm trying to align it with them getting online. And the other tweak, page 4, lines 13 through 16. Rather than repealing those, just pushing out the sunset dates. Kind of being consistent with what we did yesterday, for example, with a completely different bill, but you know, just pushing out the sunset date on the raise the age thing rather than repealing it. We just kind of do that same thing here, push it out to 2038 or rather than repealing those sunset dates.
Representative Logan.
I am not opposed to pushing the sunset out, but I would want to ensure that funds were available throughout the construction process. So that would be several years out
Yeah,
for
like
2038.
Okay.
So I feel like a future legislature might realize they could repeal it when the work is done. But
Could say until the work is done.
I'm just thinking
maybe the work will
if
never be done though.
if optimistically we get these utilities online, they might have their own mechanism for funding, in which case becomes unnecessary or obsolete.
Representative Chapin.
And can you just remind us, the funding that comes out of this piece, out of this surcharge, just goes into the Clean Water Fund, not specifically for 3 acre?
Not specifically what?
Not specifically for 3 acre.
Right.
work.
No, it's for everything or whatever the board recommends and that you ultimately appropriate.
So I thought some of the thinking was that we are gonna have clean water work, frankly, in perpetuity, unfortunately for Vermont.
I guess I'm wondering why do you?
Again, optimistically thinking we'll get some utilities online by then, and they're doing their own fundraising. That they would have their own mechanisms. Wouldn't necessarily.
This is just sort of one leg of the stool on money, right? So
I figure out a way to save the taxpayers some money.
Representative Logan.
Thanks. I mean, the way that it was written before is that, this would sunset and then the funds would go to the Housing and Conservation Trust Fund. Is that
The
correct?
surcharge would reduce from at that time 0.2 to 0.04.
Ah,
And the 0.04 would be used to cover the revenue obligations of the housing bond that was from 2017.
oh, I see.
And I'll just remind the committee that the money sections of this bill are going to go to the money committees. Off to appropriations, as there's an appropriation identified in here, and then Ways and Means. That's why we need to vote it out this week. Representative Tagliavia.
I'm sure you probably would have given us an example, but is there an example out there that you know of that could be used as a model stormwater that's shown some level of success
Well,
in another state?
in Vermont, South Burlington's has been pretty good. Burlington's Public Works Department is pretty awesome. And how they do stormwater.
Culture.
I mean, all the MS4s,
Right.
like they're doing it.
Yeah.
Yes,
Burlington has been doing like innovative stuff for about a decade now, if not longer.
all right, so we have I think a request from Representative North to put a date on this as opposed to having it be undated.
as opposed to repealing the sunset, just push out the sunset date. And it's just, I believe this is a setting of the change from 0.2 to the 0.04.
Now you're gonna have to make me do a lot more work, actually.
I mean, I guess for me, I feel like foreseeable future, we need this money. And the property transfer tax applies kind of incrementally to the values of properties, right, Michael? I mean,
Yeah.
so it's not like
Right.
every property that sells is subject to these taxes, it's
Well, it's over, I think it's over. Can't remember if it's 150 or 100,000 right now
I was higher than that.
value, and then it's on that. And then there are exceptions to that.
Okay.
So it's not on your total value of your property. It's really only over that threshold amount, which I can't recall off the top of my head.
I mean, I would just make the case that if this was just about 3 acre, I would see where you're coming from, but I think this is about clean water in such this huge way, and I just, and I think the Ways and Means will scrutinize this and have a deep conversation about this topic.
It will, because they're gonna be thinking about that housing bond.
Just eliminating the sunset of these kinds of things feeds into the public's view that once something that's temporary gets put in place, well, yeah, the state house is just gonna make it permanent anyhow, so it's just, it's not a good public look for us.
I'm not opposed,
Implement
I'm not
something
opposed.
temporary and then turn it
But-
into permanent.
Yeah, so the tax is permanent. It's just a matter of where it's going. So we're just deciding that we want it to stay going to this particular
Water.
place for the foreseeable future. And, we know we're gonna need this money for this work for a very long time, and to say whether we're gonna sunset or at some very long date in the future, I think I would just leave that to a future legislature to decide that if at some point we're doing really well with funding clean water, that I'm sure they'll want to find other places to put that money.
At least I'm on record for trying to save the taxpayers some money. Put there.
All right. Moving on. The next bill.
Oh, okay.
Think you're finished.
So, on to H 319, I did not see A&R Billy Costa's recommended change until I got here, and it's probably good that I didn't because Billy didn't do it right.
Okay.
So,
We have a handout?
It's not you.
Just to clarify, we're on 319, but Billy Coster's number 122.
I would take you to my version, which I don't see.
It's not here.
Yesterday,
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's go to Billy's version.
Did you submit a version?
Pardon?
Did you submit a?
I thought I sent it to Annika, did I not?
two posted from yesterday.
It looks like it did not go through. All right, so let's look at Billy's version.
If you made changes, you could probably just email it to all of us and if it's better or whatever you decide.
So I'll show you what's going on. In Billy's version, you'll see, actually, let me step back. Last year, in the Climate Superfund Protection Act, you directed the agency to adopt what's called the Resilience Implementation Strategy. The strategy the state's going to use to address climate issues, climate resilience, and ultimately the costs that are going to be incurred for that, that will then be assessed to those who are liable under the Climate Super Fund. You directed the agency to adopt that resilience implementation strategy by rule as part of the several things that they need to adopt by rule. And you see that on Billy's document making, and that language that's blue is that right after the blue language, you will see the resilience implementation strategy. Billy tried to kind of use the existing language and shoehorn that instead of rulemaking, they're going to submit it to the General Assembly, but you have to go back up that page where it says the agency shall adopt rules necessary to implement the requirements of this chapter.
Oh, yeah.
He's trying to shoehorn something into rulemaking that you don't want in rulemaking. So you have to take that out of the rulemaking section and create its own section, a new sub C, where it says the secretary. And this is where I would have used his language. I would have said the secretary shall submit the resilience implementation strategy to the General Assembly on or before September 15th. And then you say what the strategy includes, which Billy did. And that would be that. That would tell you. And then you have to get rid of the implementation date in section 3, which I did do and Billy did do as well. So I need to go back and tweak this to kind of do what Billy was trying to do, and Billy's doesn't work. It's just trying to draft on the fly.
Do members have any concern with us including this in our technical corrections A&R bill? I think it's fine, and we check advocates. And does it raise any flags for you, Michael?
No, I mean, if you still maintain a date, in fact, this is proposing that the date's going to be sooner than what is in.
Under implementation.
This brings it back September 2025, and the final under the bill last year was January 26th. So you're getting this sooner than what you would have, when you would have gotten it last under the bill last year.
But then the final deliverable here in implementation is a year out on the second page.
Where's the final deliverable?
No, on or before July 1, 2026.
Under the red line.
For the red lines on the second page.
Yeah, but that's for the other rules.
Oh, for the climate super.
No, there are other rules. So if you look at 10 VSA 599A, B1 and 2 are not the resilience strategy. 59A, B3 is the resilience strategy. And you address that in the red line last year, but the agency is now proposing that it come to you September 15th.
So, okay. And then I see the second sub A, even though they're both sub A's, they're not, okay. So it'll be more clear once it's in
Is
statute.
it helpful if I post that?
No, because this language isn't in it yet, but thank you. But yeah, yes, please post it.
So I can go do all that.
Okay. Before you do, can we talk about what's changed in the draft 1.1 of the 319?
Sure. So did a very fast walkthrough of this with you the other day. One of the things I walked through were changes to the paint extended producer responsibility program. That entire program and all of those changes have been removed.
The only change was in adding the other paint products.
No.
Oh,
So remember,
We are.
so
We're
well, we're gonna
I don't know
have,
if we have it.
we're on H319. we're about to get draft 1.1 available to us. Annika hasn't quite posted it yet, but it also doesn't have, so, okay, we need to look at the other changes that got lost by taking the whole paint program out. I thought they wanted the change I wanted, I'm sorry if I wasn't clear, was just taking out, moving the other paint products out of the household hazardous waste and putting it into paint. That's what we were asked to do, but I think the other changes need to happen. Was there another change in the paint program? There wasn't.
The big change was changing the paint assessment from something that the manufacturer, the stewardship organization develops and changing it to a statutory fee.
Statutory what?
Statutory fee.
And that was part of that change.
That was part of what was in the paint program, yeah.
Changes. In addition to what I just said, moving the paint products out of hazard. Okay. So I guess we need to be, and we would, why do they want the fee change? They haven't even, that's funny. I don't think they spoke to that unless I missed it.
I honestly, I can only speculate about why they want that.
All right. So my feeling right now, members, is that the request to move paint products out of household hazardous waste and into the paint program, it may have some legitimacy, but we don't have time to consider it. And that I have asked Michael to take it out so we can move this bill. And if the Senate finds that it is something worth pursuing, they can pursue it with more time.
Support that.
Okay.
A different strategy.
Representative Morris.
Include it. Let them.
I know that our solid waste management districts are not happy with it. And I personally don't want to burden them with that. That's the testimony we heard. They are concerned about compensation. And the paint products representative came in today and said, no, we're going to work with them. So I made the recommendation to them to bring some very specific language that would articulate the agreements they would make with our solid waste management entities to cover the increased costs of collecting those different types of products.
And they
Why would they want to do that if it's not? It's contained within hazardous household waste still, if we don't move it out there into the paint care.
Why would the paint care people want to?
Want to do that if they're.
I guess because they get more income from dealing with them. I don't think it's a bad idea. They would be proactively managed sooner than the household hazardous waste program because that hasn't been set up. And California, like he said, California went that route. But I don't think we are ready to make that decision right now. Representative Bartholomew.
I can support that, and I want to just re-emphasize what you said, is that this has merit, there needs more time, and we're not taking it out because we think it's a terrible idea, but we just need more time and don't have it.
Can we make a recommendation that it be looked at?
Sure, I know it'll be looked at.
It will.
They'll make sure, yeah.
Okay, because it seems like if it could work
And
out, it would.
I'll be clear with our Senate colleagues.
Great, thank
The
you.
lobbyists will make sure that it gets.
I'm
I
sure
don't think
they
you need to worry about that.
The districts are fired up.
Other thoughts on that? Okay, so we're gonna make the changes to the dates in the household hazardous waste and the way it's being rolled out. Maybe walk us through the high level things. We didn't get to exactly every section, but we did take testimony from the Agency of Natural Resources on the last two sections that we didn't get to.
Okay. So I'll just use 3.319 as introduced.
Well, it might be.
Now there's one on.
Did you get it up? You got it up for today. It should be there. The new one's up.
Track 1.1.
Yeah.
312, 624.
Yep, that's today.
So thank you, Annika.
So the first section relates to the battery extended producer responsibility program and pushing out the date for referencing their formation. Last year you tweaked some requirements for them and were requiring them to have that assessment of how to manage batteries and energy storage systems by July 2026. A&R is passing that to the stewardship organization, and they're coming back in 2027 with that. Section 2 relates to fuel storage tanks and how they are going to be addressed, inspected for purposes of delivery. Did they come in and talk to you about that one?
Members have questions on that?
Okay, household hazardous waste, the EPR program, this is largely date and how they kind of roll in the program. Remember, they're going to start out with a 3-year initial plan that's not as vigorous as a normal plan would be. And then in 3 years, they would start, after they've collected information and know how to do it, they would beginning, I think it's 2020, no, when do they begin the full plan? The full plan is, I think it's about 2029, but I have to confirm that. And then it's full plan. They have to accept any material that's covered by the program that is provided. They have to have a convenient location. They have to have a way of funding municipal participation. They have to have performance goals.
I have a question on paint-related products getting in there for term.
If you take the paint program out, the definition of architectural paint should stay in.
That's what I think, yeah. So there it is on line 10. That's where I'm at on page 3.
Yep.
So you'll take that, you'll put it back.
Yep. So I'm just gonna skip out of the EPR program, if that's
Yeah,
okay.
that's fine, yeah.
Takes you to page 20, going on to 21. There's something called the Healthy Homes Initiative. It was an ARPA program that made money available through the state to homeowners to make repairs to improve drinking water, wastewater, or stormwater systems when those homeowners were low to moderate income or who lived in manufactured housing communities or both. They collected information regarding who received money from the Healthy Homes Initiative. Typically in Vermont, that would have been a public record, but under ARPA and the Healthy Homes Initiative, there was a directive that that information remain confidential. And so in order to conform with the ARPA requirements, they are going to provide that the information submitted to or compiled to the department as part of the Healthy Homes Initiative shall be considered confidential unless the person providing the information designates that it is not. And they want that to apply retroactively because technically in Vermont, as soon as you produce or acquire a record, it becomes public unless it's otherwise confidential. So you have to kind of reach back to apply this confidentiality to those that were produced or acquired then. I don't know what committee did the Healthy Homes Initiative to begin with. Probably was something that the Appropriations or Institutions Committee just did with the money that they had. Because
For the institutions, there was not a recollection that it came there.
So moving on from there, flood safety. Last year you adopted a pretty significant bill that addressed flood planning, river corridor planning, wetlands rules, wetlands, kind of offsets and dam safety. And you directed there were multiple dates in that bill for the agency to achieve. And they're asking that all of those dates be pushed back a year.
And Michael reminded me that these are the dates the agency originally asked for.
Yes, they did originally ask for these dates and I think it was really Senate that said no. So that's what pretty much everything to the last section does. Pushes all those dates back. And then the last section is the effective date.
Okay. So, members, it's 4:00. Suspect, Michael, you could make these changes and we could get back to you and still be done by 5, or you could make the changes and we reconvene at 8. What are folks' preferences? Stay.
What works for you, the state?
I can do them, but I have a meeting at 5, but I can do them before that.
Okay, let's convene at 8.
Oh, that one, man.
You do, okay.
Do that? Yeah, okay.
So we will,
I'm sure you could do that.
we'll look at the changes at 8:00 tomorrow morning in both of these bills.
I think Annika already has me scheduled in.
So that's why we,
Oh,
that was the only time I could find for you. And so before you came, I just asked members if they were available then. And I think it works pretty well. We can walk through and then go to the floor, come back and vote. Great. Does that work for you, Michael?
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other comments from members before we end the day?
So when do you go to the floor tomorrow?
9:30.
I might be in the Senate committees testifying. Are you gonna be all right?
You mean, what do you mean? We'll have you from 8 to 9.
For 2:38.
Oh,
I'll be fine. I'll come from
Okay.
in the Senate. We have a problem.
yeah. All right.